powerful tool. It gives positive peer pressure, knowing that their peers are reading it, and it gains recognition. And another thing that's kind of interesting to consider is if you have ever seen the shadowy depths of the average student's binder, then you may reconsider giving them back that masterpiece. Online, putting that work online is not only a method of publication, but it's also a great way of archiving that and saving the work from being possibly destroyed, lost, or otherwise not being able to be read again. When I'm reading with intent, so for instance, thinking of something to collect in a blog, then I evaluate each new piece of information more carefully. So instead of just reading something to get it over with so that I've completed the assignment, I think about how I can incorporate it into my story, poem, or other project. So there was an assignment recently, actually, that I had, and it was supposed to be that I was writing from the point of view of a person on the Oregon Trail. And so I went back to my history book, and I was reading it, and I realized that I was reading a lot more carefully than originally. I was thinking, I'm looking for the date when this person left. I'm looking for a detail about the hardships, because this is a way that I can accomplish my project. So project-based learning is definitely a good way of creating an innovative classroom. Another thing that I love to do is something called writing to learn. So writing to learn is a big concept in many of my presentations. It's basically writing across the curriculums and using writing to help cement those ideas. So one of them that I do is write about a current event in the first person, write about the same event from two different perspectives. This activity works with historical events as well. Now, a lot of students that I've worked with have trouble understanding the concept of point of view. This activity can help. You might want to use a sort of simple visual, like the cat and the fish, and think, what does the fish think? The fish is terrified. The fish is scared, seeing this giant furry monster lurking up above it. So that's what the fish thinks. Now, what about the cat? What does the cat think? Well, my owners went on vacation and I'm hungry. That fish swimming around looks good. When you have a simple visual like this and talk about point of view, then you can actually graduate maybe to more important things like writing about the same event from two different perspectives, historical events like the American Revolution. So in a language arts class, you would be able to work also with what students are learning in their history class and create an interesting article that not only reflects what they've been learning in history, but also helps them understand that difficult concept of point of view. So that's one right to learn activity that I love to do. Another one, choose a topic you want to become an expert in and create weekly blog posts about the things you learn. I actually did this one. I was looking to find out more about ancient China, a topic I was very interested in. And so I would get Google alerts on the topic, I would look at different websites and check out books from the library, and then assimilating all that information, I would create weekly blog posts about this emperor, or that tomb, or this kind of furniture from that era. So it was a really interesting project. It allowed me to not only learn more about the topic, but reach higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, like being able to evaluate and analyze and apply that information. It's really important that one of the most important things I think of project-based learning is that it allows you to reach multiple levels of work. So students are, first of all, getting that basic knowledge, but also comprehending it and applying it. And that's what makes project-based learning so appealing. This is another one I've tested. Write poems that represent new vocabulary words and then have your classmates guess which word inspired the poem. Vocabulary has always been something that kids have had difficulty with. Like even me, even though I really, really love words, looking at a list of words and the definitions can be not that appetizing. And when I think about kids who really hate words, then I am not even sure if they tear up the paper or something. So if you can make it more fun and interactive and social, like writing poems and then having classmates guess which word inspired the poem, it can make learning vocabulary more fun. So for instance, with the word insolence, I wrote a poem about that. She would not listen, simply screamed, while others stared in shock. She put her mother in the pantry, locking every lock. She did not do her sums at all. She made fun of her aunt. Whenever asked to do something, her favorite word was can't. She would have continued if she hadn't packed her trunk and set sail on a caravel, which promptly sunk. Now, this one, people guessed first impertinent, since that was a word we were also learning. Oh, thank you for the virtual applause. I appreciate it. And then we went through, excuse me, sorry, different words, guessing that. It was a really interesting project because people were getting involved, they were guessing. It's a lot like when you see a fun game of Pictionary or charades, people are guessing and really into it. And you can actually create that same effect, even though it is vocabulary, something that seems so dry and boring. Writing poems, doing a creative activity. Another one is Hitchhiker, where you sit pretending you're in a car, somebody sticks out their thumb, gets in, and has to act out the words. So if you were malevolent, then you would pretend that you were hiding a firecracker under somebody's seat. Or it would be a kind of interesting project to see kids acting it out or writing a poem to make vocabulary come alive. Writing is something that I found can be applied to pretty much any topic, however boring it is, to make it more interesting. Writing to learn inspires me to write more on my own. Another thing that really inspires me is when my teachers get involved in a creative project. Which brings me to Kids Eye View tip number 1, make learning social. Get everybody involved. Now, keep in mind, Kids Eye View tip number 1, so it would be out of order if it was classroom, but this is a different type of tip. Now, I'm going to be doing writing for my example here because I am a writer and so I have more expertise on the topic. But I was thinking about writing and I realized that it's typically thought of as a very lone activity, and writers like J.D. Salinger and Emily Dickinson, the typical recluse, haven't really helped that image. But Emily Dickinson is like so 1800s. That's not really my voice. Innovative writing is very much 21st century, and you can make it social through methods like collaborative writing and student blogs, and give your up-and-coming student writers an audience. Oh, and by the way, I just realized that I should have said 19th century since Emily Dickinson was around in the 1800s. She's also one of my favorite poets. Now, back to topic. Sharing is encouraging. You may have found this out at some time during life, that when another student raises his or her hand, then probably the student next to her, another student will raise his or her hand. It might be partially because they think, oh, I won't get called on because that person already raised their hand, but it's also a sort of chain effect. When one person does something, people will follow. And when you participate, it lets students know that you aren't just expecting them to share, you're willing to share yourself. This is what I fancifully call the poison tester effect. When, not that your homework or the assignments that you give your students are lethal, dangerous, or in any way toxic or fatal, your students may have these thoughts of paranoia lurking around their subconscious. So now, often I'm pretending to be psychologist mode. If you think about it, then if you participate in an activity, then they may be a little less fearful. They'll think, oh, the teacher can do it. Maybe I can too. Classroom tool number 2. Before students tackle projects on their own, collaborative group writing is a good way to demonstrate new concepts. It builds teamwork, students working together and working with you, and it also helps combat a fear of writing, which we see in so many students. So give a check mark if you've seen a fear of writing before.